Hello everyone, and a very good morning or afternoon depending on where you're joining us from today. Thank you very much for coming along to this webinar to introduce our newest collaboration, Responding to Disclosures of Sexual Violence, Guidance for Staff. We should be taking about 45 minutes of your time today, including an opportunity for a designated question and answer session at the end. So firstly, just a couple of introductions. That's me, Sarah Vaughan, on the left-hand side. I'm the events manager at Epigeum, and we're the organisation that puts together the online courses. A large part of my role is looking after our collaboration and implementation workshops, as well as our product launches and online events such as this. I'll let Laura in the middle introduce herself now, followed by Professor Nicole Westmarland on the far right.
Hi everyone, I'm Laura Dent. I'm Head of Publishing at Epigeum, and I'll be sharing a little bit of information on the course later in the webinar.
Hi, I'm Nicole Westmarland. I'm a Professor of Criminology at Durham University, and I have a background within Rape Crisis. I used to be Chair of the National Rape Crisis Group and I direct a research centre called the Durham Centre for Research into Violence and Abuse.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Nicole. So just a quick look at the agenda before we get started. First, we'll look a little bit at Epigeum itself. So we're the organisation that puts together the programmes through a collaborative model, and it's quite unique. So I'll show you a short video that explains how this approach works. Then we'll move on to Professor Nicole Westmarland's presentation, who will tell you about her vision for the new collaboration. Following this, Laura will provide an overview of the course, as well as speak in more detail about the Epigeum course development model. I will then show you a brief demonstration of an existing course called Avoiding Plagiarism, just to give you an idea of what our courses look and feel like. We will then wrap up with a question and answer session. So we were founded in 2005 as a spin-out originally from Imperial College London. Our two founders created the company in response to what they felt was a lack of timely support for researchers. One of our founders was doing a PhD at the time while working, and he came across issues that he wanted and needed to be advised on. And it would either be that there would be a face-to-face course in 3 months' time, or there was inadequate material online that didn't quite fit what he needed. So he saw this as an opportunity to work with universities to create supportive materials for researchers, particularly PhD students and postdocs like himself, that gave just-in-time support for all those issues. And that's where we started, in this sort of research arena within higher education, and in the 10 years since, we have expanded to studying programs, courses for students, and teaching and leadership programs for staff, of which this is one of. We were acquired by Oxford University Press in May of last year. Oxford University Press are actually a division of Oxford University, so we're still within the not-for-profit organisation in a higher education context and still very much focused on creating high-quality materials. To date, in the decade since we have been formed, we have created over 92 online courses across 19 different programs, and we have currently 7 in development. We're an increasingly globally focused organisation and have worked with over 260 universities across 29 different countries worldwide to date. This is a map just to show you what countries we have been involved with in the development of our courses. Now I'd like to show you a short video which will explain our development process to you in a bit more detail.
The story of an Epigeum course. We come up with an idea and we consult widely to develop and fine-tune it. We commission a team of expert authors to write it, and a team of expert reviewers to help them. We commission a lead advisor who gives strategic vision and leadership. And we bring together a team of universities who form a development group to give feedback on our plans and prototypes, and to make sure the product meets their needs. The collaborations we build are drawn from across the world and often involve input from over 50 academics, as well as our team of in-house specialists. Because we believe that collaboration and iteration are the key to producing truly innovative and effective products. So we bring everyone together for a launch workshop at the start of each project. It's a great mixing pot where the creative juices can flow and expertise can be shared. We provide a week-long training course for our writing team to make sure they're able to get the best out of the online medium. And we provide plenty of opportunities for sampling and feedback along the way through a detailed peer review process. In fact, a typical product goes through at least 5 iterations before it's ready to be built by our in-house developers. Together we're more than the sum of our parts, and our unique and rigorous product development process gives all collaborators access to groundbreaking courses they couldn't have created alone. Here's what some of our customers have to say. Our products are used by over 200 institutions in 25 different countries. To find out more about the collaborations we're currently building, click on the Next Steps button or get in touch with us direct. We'd love to work with you.
So to summarize the content of the video you have seen, here are just a couple of bullet points I'd like to take you through. The development group of universities come together and share their experience at a workshop to help us create a really great online course. We recruit authors all under the guidance of a lead advisor. In the case of this program we are discussing today, Professor Nicole Westmarland. The lead advisor is the person who has the expertise in the area who can lead and shape the vision for the program. We have a meticulous review process in place which allows the development group to look at the content of the courses, check that it matches their expectations and comment on it as well. Thus, the development group of universities are the early adopters who get to use the program and implement them at their universities. And then we make it available to other universities on a license basis, which is what we will be able to do with the completed program for responding to disclosures of sexual violence guidance for staff. So just a quick slide about implementation. To implement these courses at your institution and to make sure that they are effective, we suggest 3 different kinds of ways in which you can do this. So you can offer them as standalone online courses where you share them with staff and they get to do this in their own time, whether it's at home or at the institution. You can offer them as tutor-supported online courses in which a tutor is involved as well as getting your staff to do the courses. And then finally, we do recommend this option the most. It's to offer it as part of a blended learning program. This is considered to be the most effective way of engaging with staff in courses, especially online courses. We have a dedicated implementation team at our offices in London, and also we have a member of staff based in Australia as well. So they would be very happy to help you when it comes to implementing the course at your institution. Now I'd like to hand over to Professor Nicole Westmarland, and she will talk to you a little bit about her vision for the project.
Hi everyone. So this first slide just covers who I am, as I said earlier on in my introduction. So I'm going to start off by kind of thinking about why now. Why is it now that we should be thinking about how we respond to disclosures of sexual violence and think about training staff within our universities? Well, first of all, there's been an increasing awareness of the scale of sexual violence generally within society. We've seen big kind of scandal cases like Savile and other people at the BBC, and there's been kind of what some people call a breaking of the silence around sexual violence and abuse broadly in society. So what we have is more people speaking out about it, and that of course includes students and also some of our staff as well. Particularly influential in North America and then in the UK and places like Australia has been the Hunting Ground documentary, which has gained a lot of high-profile showings, a lot of discussion. It's really kind of kick-started discussion and also shown us where, to some extent, we don't want to be in 3 to 5 years' time. We don't want to develop policies that just aren't going to be used. We don't want to raise awareness within universities that then we don't do anything positive about. We don't want the universities just to kind of get more and more closed in around these issues. We've obviously had more high-profile read legal cases on the topic, and there's just generally more awareness of sexual violence as an issue. Some of the newspapers, the Telegraph, etc., have also taken it on as a campaigning issue. We've got much more student-level feminist activism on the increase, and that's female students and male students actually demanding that something be done about sexual violence and other gender equality issues within universities. And obviously the issue of increased parental involvement as well, with questions being asked at open days, etc., around what is in place to support their child when they come to university. You know, are there specific policies? What would happen if things did go wrong at university when they came? So it's not an issue that's going to be dropped, fall off the agenda at any time in the short term, as far as I can see. So in terms of the research context, at Durham University we did a rapid evidence assessment of current interventions, approaches and policies about sexual violence on campus. Most of this research has come so far from North America. There's very little research, just a handful of studies from other countries such as the UK, Australia. And what we find is that between a fifth and a quarter of women are raped at some point in their student life, even higher rates of sexual assault victimisation when we look at this more broadly. This is a very dated study, but this is just to show really how long it's been on the agenda for in North America and how much it's just starting, you know, in the last few years to be this high up and have this type of survey type work done in the UK to display prevalence. And of course we know it's not just restricted to women, although women do seem to be at a much higher, are abused at a much higher rate than male students, but this is an issue across all of our student populations as well as our staff. There is some encouraging evidence, particularly from North America, that something can be done on the issue, particularly bystander interventions and consent educations and campaigns. So this isn't a problem where we have to work out. We don't have to start at the beginning in terms of thinking what responses we need. We already can draw on that North American research to be able to say, look at the sort of things that might be useful elsewhere in the world. So in terms of the policy context, a lot of this work, a lot of the campaigning so far has been done around often newspapers, often using freedom of information requests. A UK recent investigation by The Guardian said that fewer than half of elite universities in Britain systematically log all allegations of sexual violence or sexual harassment and monitor the levels. I think in reality this is quite a polite conclusion to have been drawn. I think really probably no university is systematically logging all allegations, and that's because of the way that some complaints are given to vastly different people across the university. So when we think about the type of people who might be receiving disclosures, it's everyone, you know, right from professors, from student leaders in welfare to student helplines, but also down to the people who are seeing sometimes students most often and perhaps are most trusted by students, so people like cleaners and porters as well. There's obviously a UK inquiry at the moment with Universities UK setting up a task force which is expected to report in the autumn of this year. But the End Violence Against Women Coalition actually believe that UK universities are already legally obliged to ensure that women at university are able to enjoy their university experience free from abuse using existing equalities legislation. Other countries are also starting to get this kind of national profile, state profile around tackling the issue, such as the Respect Now Always campaign in Australia. So in terms of disclosures, we know, as I was saying, that students do disclose both to academic staff where they have been raped. Sometimes they disclose about experiences of sexual abuse that they experienced when they were younger. Sometimes going away to university, if their abusers have been family members, it's the first time where they've had a safe space in order to talk about these issues. So this might include professors, lecturers, college principals, but also people like cleaners and porters as well. There was a study done in America that found that 42% of the academics that they surveyed said that they'd received some kind of crime disclosure from a student, and in most of those cases the most recent disclosure was of a form of gender-based violence, so either rape, sexual assault or domestic violence or similar. We know from experience that particularly high rates might be instigated if there's a specific topic or an incident in class, so particularly criminology classes, law classes, English, history, if there's a particular set text which starts to look at issues of sexual assault, then this may lead to increased disclosures. Similarly, if a student group or if a staff group are showing something like the hunting ground, this can also lead to an increase in disclosures. The more people start talking about this issue within universities, the more in the short term we can expect disclosures to start to increase. Why is it particularly complicated then to respond to a disclosure of sexual violence is a question that is sometimes asked. You know, why can't we just rely on our staff to know what to do in terms of using their common sense, in terms of referring on to appropriate organisations and responding in a caring manner? Well, this comes down to some of the myths, stereotypes, opinions that people often have about topics like sexual violence. They may not know the answers to things. They may compound victims' anxieties, they may compound victim blaming without meaning to do so. So for example, if a victim has been laid awake all night or been thinking it over in their mind for the last week, 2 weeks, they often start to blame themselves quite quickly. You know, why did I have that extra drink? Why did I allow him to buy me that drink? Why did I not watch my drink? Why did I not get a taxi home? One of the things that victims are known to do repeatedly is to try to think, to often blame themselves for putting themselves in that situation, which obviously is not the case at all. So that sometimes means that in a response, when you ask general questions around, well, what were you doing? Why did you walk home alone? How many drinks do you think you had? These then become not neutral questions. They become questions which the victim has already been thinking about, going over in their own mind many times themselves. So to be asked then that by somebody else can really compound that and make them think, well, maybe, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that, and it can compound their own kind of victim blaming experiences. Research with the police, for example, shows that even a facial expression, even particular looks, can make victims feel that they're not being believed and feel that their experience is being doubted, because that is what they are to some extent expecting to happen. So this is my final slide, and this is when things go wrong, and this is obviously another reason to make sure that we have guidance for staff, and staff are trained in responding to disclosures. The impacts of receiving negative responses have been well documented. In the UK, there's been a recent suicide last year of Hannah Stubbs, who had reported rape to the university and to the police, and went on to kill herself. And this really does underline the potentially devastating impacts of rape on students and also on the staff who worked with Hannah as well and her fellow students. So if I was kind of thinking back to that first slide of why now, yes, there is the why now. There's the policy context, there's the legal cases, there's the student pressure, there's all of those reasons. There's the national review, but also ultimately, and this is why, you know, I'm keen to be involved in this, ultimately it is because we want the best for our students and our colleagues, and we want our universities to be safe places for responding and for responding to disclosures of sexual violence if they do take place. So this is, yeah, it's also about this for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Now I'll hand over to Laura.
Hi everyone. I wanted to follow on from Nicole's presentation there and just share a little bit more specific information about the course we're developing. So really we are putting together an online course providing training for staff members who could receive disclosures of sexual violence from students. We're going to launch the final course and publish it in December 2016, so later this year, and we will be working during the course development to incorporate any recommendations that come out of the Universities UK Task Force and the University Australia work as well. You remember that Sarah shared a bit of an overview about our collaboration process at the start of this webinar, and the workshop that we were talking about, the startup workshop where the universities come together to comment on the course outlines, is planned for June 2016. So we're hoping to hold that workshop quite soon and really come together and finalise the outline and finalise what you might need from a course in this area. So we spoke to quite a lot of universities during the research and the scoping for this course, really to find out about the context at different universities and the different challenges that universities were facing in terms of responding to disclosures. I think some of this echoes Nicole's points, and I think the main challenge that universities came back with was that it's just such a large number of staff and a variety of roles that can receive a disclosure, and that really the institutions we spoke to are really struggling to provide effective training to such a large number of staff. I think as well the institutions were a little concerned that they weren't capturing all the instances of disclosure because staff might be unsure of how to handle it, or they're a bit unconfident. They know it's a very complex and sensitive issue, and some of the institutions I spoke with, for example, were a bit worried that disclosures going to student union staff weren't actually being captured. And so again, this is something that we might be able to support you with in the course. As well, there's the obvious challenge that if an institution mishandles the disclosure, it exposes them to legal action or reputational damage. But I think underpinning it all was a real concern that if an institution mishandles the disclosure, really they're just causing further distress. Working with Nicole's vision and incorporating the feedback that we've had from some of the institutions we spoke to, we are putting together a course which is made up of the 4 modules that you can see outlined in front of you. The course in total will be around, I'd say, 60 to 75 minutes of online content. And we want to really set some of the context and give an understanding of sexual assault and set a bit of a benchmark there before we go into the modules that look at responding to the disclosure specifically. I thought it might be useful to share some of the learning outcomes that we have for the course overall. Now, we can give you a lot more detail on the course coverage, so I won't go through it too extensively at the moment. But really, the first couple of modules are about setting the scene. We would be looking at exploring the sexual culture that young people are surrounded by in terms of, let's say, advertising for club nights or events at the student union, that kind of thing. And we'd also be looking at some of the key statistics of sexual violence, drawing on some recent reports. We also want to just spend a little bit of time on boundaries and actually what definitions of consent are and what doesn't constitute consent, so that that's sort of clearly conveyed to staff. And then also challenge some of the common misperceptions, like false reporting statistics, or if the person didn't fight or there aren't any signs of violence, then it wasn't rape or assault. So that really sets a bit of a benchmark, I think, for staff before we move into the next couple of modules. We've got a module really focused on understanding and supporting the individual. So it's looking at understanding the barriers around potentially reporting an assault, whether that's to the institution or whether it's taken forward to the police, and how a staff member can support the individual when they receive a disclosure. So what to say and also actually what not to say, and how to be non-judgmental and establish some clear boundaries as well. We'll also cover letting the individual know about their options for support and look into long-term support. So looking at, for example, the impacts or potential impacts on academic studies or on the student's social life. And then finally, we have a module on how to respond to a disclosure in line with institutional responsibility. Now, we know that institutions may have different referral pathways, or you may want to highlight specific policies. So it's probably worth saying at this point that you can actually customize the courses. If you use the course on your VLE, then we can work with you to add screens of content, for example, or conversely, if there's a screen that you want to take out that you don't think is appropriate for your institution, you can do that as well. You can also add in signposting to specific teams or specific staff members and really just make it a little bit more tailored and sort of bespoke for your needs. So in this final module, we would look at the staff members' responsibilities in terms of perhaps referral routes and care pathways, and also what isn't their responsibility, as well as looking at areas such as the needs of the alleged perpetrator, safety of the individual making the disclosure, areas like preserving evidence, confidentiality, and so on. The other themes that really came through from the institutional feedback is the need for staff support. So we would cover as well self-care for the staff member receiving the disclosure, so that they learn to recognise that and know how to get the support they need in dealing with it. So this is an online training program. So we would convey this information and the learning journey through a number of features and techniques. We're actually developing a course for students on consent and boundaries and bystander intervention. And actually we thought there were some really good student interviews that we've done that we would include in this course for the staff, because I think it's quite interesting to hear from the student's own viewpoint actually their perceptions of sexual violence, or actually instances where bystander intervention has helped. So we'll have things like animations and audio throughout the course. We'll also have interactive comprehension activities, as you would expect really from an online course. So that's just enabling the staff member or the user to check their understanding of the key concepts. We'll also have scenario activities, and these really just enable the staff to practice how they would respond to realistic situations and practice their responses. We'd also like to have some videos with staff sharing their experiences and their thoughts on how they've handled disclosures and their thoughts on best practice. And if you join the collaboration process for this course, then it might be that you could do some filming with staff at your institution if that's something you would be interested in. So finally, I think the real benefits with this proposed course is helping you scale up the training provision across the institution so that you can reach a wide variety or all staff members if needed. And I think the key thing here is that it helps you provide consistent training across the different staff roles in the department so that you as an institution are providing a consistent response to disclosures. And then finally from me, I just wanted to share a little bit of information on the development process. We've spoken a little bit about the workshop, which we'll be holding in June. And really, we come together, we really go through the course outline and the topic coverage and the user journey really for the course as well, and refine that and come to a version that we're all happy with and that we think can meet everyone's needs. The authors then go away and they write the course, and then you get the chance to peer review it. So you get to see the storyboards with the text, and you also get to see plans for the activities and any plans for, say, the animations and the videos that we'll want to include as well. And then we'll go away and we'll develop all that and we'll test it so it's usable in a variety of sources. I sometimes get questions on what a development group member actually does and what the time commitment is there. So I would say, roughly speaking, it's probably 1 to 2 hours just to review the course outline ahead of the workshop and really think about how it might work for your institution, what your institutional context is, whether there's examples of best practice that you might want to share at the workshop. And then the workshop itself is a one-day event where, as it says, we just really refine and agree that detailed course outline. In terms of the peer reviewing, I would probably say it's a day to work through the course content if you're going to give quite thorough feedback. And then we might also come back to you at a later stage and perhaps ask you to look over an activity again or to look over a video that we might be developing. So hopefully that gives a bit of an overview, and if you've got any questions on the coverage or the approach, then we'll be happy to answer them. Sarah, I'll pass back to you if that's okay.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, so now I'd like to show you a brief demonstration of one of our online courses, which is called Avoiding Plagiarism. This is just to give you a bit of an idea of how our courses look and feel. So this page that you can see now, it's our portal for our hosted solution. A lot of universities and institutions tend to prefer to have these integrated as part of their LMS, like Blackboard or Moodle. So this is how it will look if you have it on our hosted solution, and you can access it via the internet. So this is our welcome page. We have these for all of our courses. This is just to kind of set the scene for the participant. So we start off with a list of authors. So these are the people that were involved in writing the program. We have learning outcomes, course structure, some of the highlights to look out for, and also a list of supporting institutions. This is the development group for the course, and this is what Laura and I were both covering earlier in the webinar. So to start with the main screen of the first course, I'll begin by highlighting a couple of features relevant to all our courses and screens. At the top of each screen, we have a learning outcome, so that participants are aware of what is going to be covered in the screen and what they should have learned or should be able to do after completing that screen. We also offer an estimated duration for each screen. Here it's 6 minutes, so that participants have an idea of how long it is likely to take to work through the screen. Now, moving into the main screen content, this screen introduces the student voice into the course. So we start with a text entry activity in which participants taking the course can consider some key questions and note down their answers. This encourages reflection on their own existing knowledge and also encourages students to note down their thoughts and keeps the learning active. Then they move on to a video in which real students give their thoughts on the same issues that they reflected on earlier.
Plagiarism, in fact, copying somebody's exact words, it's academic fraud. For me,
So we try to use video as much as possible in our courses as it really helps to bring the material to life. This particular instance offers course users the opportunity to compare and contrast their own responses with those of the students featured in the video. Video is short and vox pop style, and it is engaging and interesting for participants taking the course to hear what their peers have to say. It's also worth noting here that all our videos have a transcript, and also all of our course screens have a text version so that the course is fully accessible for those using screen readers or who are unable to use the interactive version for any reason. You'll see that on the right-hand side of each screen we have these little boxes, or pods as we like to call them. These contain supplementary information, links, definitions, activities, and so on. The type shown here is an optional activity pod, which invites participants to extend or apply their learning in some way. In this case, we've suggested that they set up a discussion group with other participants taking the course so that they can discuss issues that come up as the course progresses. This can help e-learning students feel like they are in more of a learning community. So I've chosen this screen as it shows off quite a nice feature of this course. These are comic strips explaining key learning points. So in this case, we have a student who used a quotation in his essay as though they were his own words, only to be picked up for plagiarism by his teacher. We've had feedback from participants who have taken the previous version of this course requesting more imagery, and we found these comic strips to be effective and engaging in other Epigeum programs as well. There's also a nice example, one of our interactive activities on these screens. So this is a decision tree in which participants taking the course can follow to help them to decide how to appropriately quote, phrase, cite, and reference. This activity helps participants to build up a thought process which they can then apply to their own learning. This is an example of a screen which provides an opportunity for participants taking the course to apply, test, and consolidate their learning. There are 2 quizzes on the screen drawing together the concepts covered in this unit. This first activity is a multiple choice quiz in which the user is presented with an example piece of material and then asked whether or not they would need to acknowledge the material if used in their work. Users can see their scores as they work through the quiz and receive feedback on each question. This second activity presents participants with a piece of academic writing, followed by various revisions of the text. Participants have to decide whether each revision constitutes plagiarism or acceptable usage, and feedback is provided for each example. This kind of interactivity is a great way to keep participants engaged and helps them to apply the principles they have read about to some real-world examples. So on this screen we have an activity which provides an opportunity for participants to practice inserting correct citations for a variety of different sources. This kind of activity keeps the learning active and engaging. The next activity allows participants to examine and understand all the different elements of an academic reference for a variety of different materials. You can see that there are a number of pods on this screen. Let me talk you through a couple of these. Here is a useful links pod. There are a lot of these pods throughout our courses. These offer useful links to online resources that participants can consult. This is an excellent way of providing an opportunity to explore topics in more depth without bloating the core course material. We create these pods in such a way that links can be replaced if or when they become inactive. Then we have these Your Context pods. In default mode, these encourage participants to find out their institutional or departmental guidelines in relation to a particular learning point. However, these pods are customizable, so universities can insert institution-specific text or links to the relevant resources, so participants have all the necessary information to hand. Finally, on this screen, we have this Do This icon. So we use this icon as a means of highlighting points of particular importance to participants. On the final screen I'd like to show you, this is a screen that provides links to a variety of articles about real-life cases, both to pique students' interest and to show them how damaging the consequences of plagiarism can be. And this would be especially relevant for the Responding to Disclosures of Sexual Violence course. Laura mentioned that, and as Nicole mentioned, there are numerous cases in real life that could be referenced in this sort of page. Again, this page is hosted by Epigeum, so articles can be swapped or removed if the links become inactive. I hope I've given you a good taste of the course content and some of the pedagogical features with this demonstration. If you have any questions, please do jot them down now or feel free to contact someone at Epigeum after the webinar. Now I'd like to move on to some questions. Nicole, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Okay, so this is from Andrea. Has there been an increase in sexual violence, or is the issue that it is talked about more and acknowledged? Secondly, is there evidence or issues relating to increased sexual violence to female staff?
I'm not aware of any convincing research that shows that sexual violence has increased either amongst the student population or amongst the towards female staff. It's possible that it has, but I've not seen that evidence because we have such poor ways of recording sexual violence that we just don't have a decent enough measure to be able to look at trends across time. I think my instinct is that it's more about awareness than it is about increased prevalence, and equally prevalence could be going down. I think it is an issue about awareness and people expecting different standards from what they expect at university and not being willing anymore to kind of accept sexual violence as just one of those things that happens. So I think it's about awareness.
Thank you very much, Nicole. Laura, I have a question for you. Will universities be able to customize information according to their own institutional policies and procedures?
Yes, they will. So, Sarah, you were showing some of the pods earlier, your context pods. So institutions can customize those if they want to perhaps add a link to a specific place to find information and support or specific staff members. But going beyond that, you can actually customize the core content of the course. So you can add in screens, and what we can do is provide you with templates to write in perhaps the copy or the text content that relates to a specific policy that you really want to highlight for your staff. And then what we can do is go in and develop that and integrate it into the course so that it looks just as though it was part of the original course content. So it will all be in the Epigeum design. Equally, if you decide that you don't want a screen for whatever reason, it doesn't work for your institution, then you can take out the screen as well. You can also reorder and reshuffle content. So there's quite a lot that we can do with you, and we'd be very happy to answer any more questions on that, and maybe to sit down if you have specific plans and ideas in mind, and we can certainly work with our implementation team and your institution to get the course that works for you, basically.
Great. Is it possible to cover everything in 60 to 75 minutes?
Yeah, I think it is. I think there's a couple of issues around this. So what we didn't want to do was make a really long training program that no one is going to do. So we wanted to create a course that gives detailed training, but it is at an introductory level. So this is aimed at any kind of staff member who could receive a disclosure. But going back to the point I was making about perhaps a blended learning approach, what you might want to do, or what an institution might want to do is follow this up or place it in the context of other strategies that their institution has. So I know some institutions are running workshops if staff have particular instances that they want to talk over, or one-on-one sessions if they've got particular queries. But I think the real benefit of this course is that it gives an institution a way to really scale up the training provision. I think arguably the feedback that was coming back from the institution is that not every staff member on campus will need really, really detailed in-depth training on this, that actually a lot of institutions would like staff to have an initial level of training, and then they might refer the student in question on, or the staff member on, to a different team within the institution to fully handle the disclosure. So I think it will work well as an introductory level of training, and I think it will give institutions the flexibility to fit this in alongside other strategies.
Thank you, Laura. I have one more question for you. Will we involve non-university voices in the development of this program?
Yes. I think in terms of perhaps organisations like Red Crisis, will be involving those voices in the development of the course, and especially in the writing of the course. I think we'll also be aiming to involve organisations like Universities UK or Universities Australia in the development as well, perhaps reviewing the content so that we have all the perspectives in there, and we know that it does meet the institutional needs.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you, Nicole. I think that's it for questions. So on my screen now, you can see our contact details. Some of you may have already been in touch with our colleagues in regards to this collaboration. We can give you a lot more detail in regards to pricing and timescales for the collaboration, so please do contact us if you have any questions regarding it. We can also provide you with a trial for one of our courses if you would like to get a feel for how they look and function. I hope this webinar has been of interest to you. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you, Laura. Thank you, Nicole. We very much look forward to hearing from you soon. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact us anytime. I hope you have an enjoyable rest of the day. Thank you very much for listening today.